All right, and we are live. Hi, Scott.
Prashant, how are you?
I'm
Croaky
doing good,
voice.
buddy. Yeah.
Got a bit of a croaky
How
voice.
has yes, quirky voice for a even more quirkier subject of what you'll be sharing soon. So
No,
let's get this started. Let's start with you. What do you have
straight,
for us today?
straight into it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to talk about sleep training, and so the last time we
Mm,
talked, I
mm,
think I can't remember the last time we had a chat. Hang on, I'll just adjust my microphone here.
mm,
But to give you the lay of the land, basically, um, going back to this is all about Louis. So basically, sleep training, and since about 4 months, Louis had just been, not sleeping well at all. So we'd sort of put him down about 7 p.m. and he would maybe do 3 hour stretch if we're lucky, 4 hour stretch at most. Actually, if we're lucky, sorry. And then he would be up sort of every 2 hours after that. So
mm,
he'd wake up and then we'd bring him into bed with us and soothe him and stuff like that. And then Charlotte would feed him, and then he would sort of wake every 2 hours and just sort of roll around and look for mum to soothe him, and she'd feed him again. And that just went on until morning time, basically.
mm.
And it was hard, man. So from 4 months until he's almost 9 months now, and it'd been going on for sort of 4 months. And so then he was overtired, like always overtired, because he just wasn't getting that proper sleep throughout the night. And then so that affected his day naps, and he would maybe sleep half an hour at most,
Mm.
40 minutes, that kind of thing. And then it just continued. And then Charlotte, obviously, she was not getting any rest. And so she was overtired as well. And so it was just this chronic cycle of overtiredness. And so, Charlotte couldn't sort of take a nap when he would nap because it's like a baby. When they're tired, they can't nap properly, right? And so
Yeah.
it was just this vicious cycle, and we were kind of just wondering what the hell we can do, and so I was still getting up to work, tired as all get out, getting to work, doing what I had to do, come home, back with the kids again. So, look, anyway, we started investigating sleep training. Um, and Charlotte actually got a referral through her doctor for this place called what's it called again? Ellen Barron. And so Ellen Barron over here in Australia it's basically like a hospital for I think it's run by midwives, but it's run by people who are specialized in training and sleep training and stuff like that. So you go to this place. It's like I think it's in a hospital. You go to the
Mm,
hospital. You go there with your child, and they teach you how to help settle your child. And so they monitor you all night long, all night, all day, and I think you go for 5 days, and
mm,
they monitor you overnight, kind of thing, and help you to settle and being away from your child and being okay with it. Anyway, we're on the list for that, and that wasn't happening until August, and we thought, look, we've got to do something sooner, and so we ended up finding like a sleep consultant, just a private sleep consultant, and it was a 14-day sort of stretch. And so basically she came to our house first, and we had a meet up with her, and she just talked about Louis and what we can do and what his sort of sleep patterns were at the moment. And then she works through like a Google Doc or like an Excel spreadsheet kind of thing. And so she's tracking all of his wake ups, his sleeping,
mm,
his feeding, that kind of stuff, and what's happening there. And so we had to put sort of all this data in for his feeding, his sleeping, his wake times. And then she went in and she said, right, yeah, let's try and tweak this. So the first thing she said is, let's separate the feed from the sleep. So he doesn't go to bed like basically just after having a feed, like because Charlotte breastfeeds. So we've got
mm,
to separate that a little bit, at least half an hour. So let's separate that, and then let's start to put him down. And what we're going to do is the goal is to try and have him to self settle. And
mm,
so that can take however long it takes. So what we do is you stay in the room with him, and if he sort of kicks off, then you're there, you're soothing him, you do whatever you need to do. You can pick him up, you can pat him, You can give him the bum wiggle, you can sing to him, you can do whatever you want, right? But the goal is he goes back down and then he has to start to settle himself somehow. So it could be sucking his thumb, or he could have like a doll or whatever it is that, in his crib or whatever. But
Mm.
you stay in there until it happens. So it was like an hour and a half, 2 hours before he started actually self-settling. And this is just in the night as well. So we would get up, he would sort of go down, he'd wake up after 2 hours, and then we'd be in there with him, and it was like 2 hours later before he went to bed. And so this happened for the first couple of nights, and then what happens is she looks again at the data. So every morning you're putting in data, okay, this is when he went to bed, this is how long it took, this is his feed when it woke up. And so then from there, basically you're starting to extract yourself from the room. So what is hopefully happening is it's getting shorter and shorter, the time it takes for him to settle. And then when you put him down, you're not taking as long to settle him. And so the gap starts to increase. And so I think it was after maybe day 4 or 5, he did like a 6-hour stretch. So we put him
Mm.
down, soothed him. Then he went to bed. 6 hours later, he woke up, and then we came in and we did the whole settle thing for another. But then, that whole resettling took about an hour and a half again. So he's kicking off for an hour and a half, and it's hard work, man. Like if when your kid's crying, when your child is crying, your instincts are just like, I need to be there. I need to settle this child, and it really gets you in the heart. And so I guess from there, it was like things started popping up too, where you could start to distinguish his cries. So a cry for mum was different to a cry for I'm tired, and then like a cry for all right, I'm starting to soothe myself. It started to sort of pop up these 3 distinct cries, which is pretty interesting. So anyway, it got to like I think we had a bit of a dip in there again, but then after sort of 10 days in, he started sleeping. We'd put him down. Actually, that's the other thing. The sleep specialist said, look, you're going to have to start putting him down earlier now. So we put him down at 5:30, and then he'd wake up 4:30 in the morning. And then Charlotte would come in and give him a feed, and he'd go back down to like 6:37. So this stretch started happening, and right up until now, we put him down anywhere from, it depends what his last sleep was. Like, so during the day, they talk about 3-hour windows. So a nap during the day, every 3 hours, he has to sort of go down. And then the last sleep dictates when he goes down at night. So if he's up at, let's say, 3 in the afternoon, then he needs to go to bed by 5:36. So basically, he goes to bed at 5:30 now, and he's up at like 4:35 in the morning. So we're getting these huge sleeps, and if he does wake up, he can settle himself down. So it's actually the best money that we've ever spent because everyone's sleeping out. Louie's so much happier. Charlotte
Mm.
is so much happier. She's more attentive as a mum. She can now be there for our needs. As a mum, and that's what she wants to be there for, to take care of us as a family. And she's also more engaged with Violet now, more engaged with Louis. Louis's happier, and he's just getting sleep, So it's definitely the best money we've ever spent in terms of that for our family. And that was,
Mm.
I guess that's the important point. It's dependent on your family needs. And I guess for us, the other thing that was on the horizon was Charlotte's work. She's got to go back to work next month. So it's, 9 months she's been at home, and she wants to take more off, but unfortunately our circumstances dictate that we can't. And so we both have to
Mm.
work. She's going to go back 2 days a week. And so that need for Louis to be settling, to be sleeping was really important for us, So it was definitely a godsend. But
Mm.
look, that also leads into another topic, which I'll talk about a bit later, where, this, I guess, the culture that we're living in now kind of, in a way, it forces these unnatural habits onto us. But hey, look, I'll chat a bit about that later. But happy to throw it over to you for your thoughts. What do you think, Prashant? And did you have a similar experience with Athara?
Yeah, with Adira, I have many stories. I think so. A few episodes are dedicated to her sleep story, sleep
Yeah.
stories for sure. Uh, but couple of things, Scott. Just make sure you keep the bill very safe and hand it over to Louis when he's 18 years old. Okay.
This is your inheritance, Louis.
This is your inheritance, and you can share your bank account details and all that stuff, so he can transfer the money into your account
Exactly.
at a compounded interest rate of 25% or whatever.
That's a
Put some
great
random.
idea. Absolutely great.
Yeah.
Maybe we could chuck it on some Bitcoin or something like that and just see it just fly
Yeah.
up.
Don't depend too much on Bitcoin. He could scam you very easily on that.
True.
So
Yes.
you better go in for hard cash, or you
Yeah,
will
true.
lose your sleep. Or you will lose your sleep over Bitcoin.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Scott, here's the thing. See, in terms of my stories with Adira's sleep, I think so. It's been well documented. But at this moment when you're sharing this experience for new parents, um, what are the top three things they should keep in mind before hiring a sleep coach? How do they decide upon a sleep coach for their child? Like,
Mm.
what was your thought process? What did you search on
Mm.
Google? Whom did you call? What was the process? Just
Ah,
take us
okay.
through like step by step process of.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, it just came down to reading up about them. Like, so that they've all got their own sort of about page and whatnot. And so we actually we contacted another one, and you get like a free 15-minute consult with them to see if you're a fit.
So before that, Scott, before you
Okay.
get into the consulting call,
Right.
how did you learn about the concept of a sleep coach, and what made
Mm.
you believe that you definitely need a sleep coach, and what made you feel comfortable that you would want an outsider to come in and train you as
Mm.
parents in how to be parents,
Mm.
um, how to be good parents
Yeah.
to a child who needs to sleep better? Like, what is the thought process there?
I guess it came down to the fact that we didn't have that. We didn't have that sort of grandparent that was there that could come
Mm,
and give us that kind of, I guess, hand down that knowledge
mm,
of. And because Violet was a good sleeper from the get go, we were really lucky with Violet. Um,
mm,
we just she just slept, and she'd always slept, and so with Louis it's completely different, and that kind of threw us off because everybody's talking about, oh, their second child's so much easier, man, so much easier. In some ways it is, but in some ways it's not, right? And so
yeah.
they're all different. And in Louis' area it was just sleeping, because he loves his mum. He's a mummy's boy. And I guess what took us down that road was, looking back on it now, is that we got caught in a trap of, like settling him. Like, so
Mm,
Charlotte always having to settle him. And so, and that was at night time at 2 in the morning when you're just absolutely bugged, you haven't been sleeping. The natural thing to do is just to bring him into bed and let him sleep with you, right? And then, she would offer up milk to him all the time. And that was his, yes, okay, great. I'm with mum, I'm settled, everything's great, And so that just kept compounding, and that was his habit. He just learned that habit that
mm,
to get to sleep, he had to have mum. And so I guess what, I guess it was out of desperation, really, is what made us look for alternatives. We're not, we didn't get that sort of, like I said, that knowledge passed down from grandma and grandpa, of
mm.
try this, try that. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. And I guess, even like, to be fair to them, they probably won't even remember what happened back in their day, So we just started looking around for alternatives. And I think I just heard the term sleep coach somewhere, or sleep consultant or whatever, or actually through that Ellen Barron that I was talking to you about. So you have to have
Mm.
a doctor's referee, like a referral,
Oh, okay.
and to get to go to this Ellen Barron, because look, Charlotte's going through postnatal depression as well, and so her doctor was like, look, we've got to do something here. And so basically that was kind of like, I guess that's the sort of last resort. You go to this place and they look after you. It's kind of like when you had a baby, you go to the place and then all the nurses are around to help you out in the hospital before you go
Mm.
home, right? And then you've got to implement that all
Yeah.
at home. And so I think I
Yeah.
found a book online that was like, about sleep training your baby, and there's different ways of doing it. There's the cried out method, there's the padding method, there's all these different methods, right? Once you start exploring it, it's like, wow, okay, there's different ways of doing things to settle your baby. And so where
Mm.
we were sort of middle of the road there, it wasn't let him cry it out, it wasn't too soft, it was sort of this staged approach. But yeah, look, I think getting back to your question, it's more about your needs, what's going on at the moment in your life. Like
Mm.
it's not a blanket approach. Like if your child's not sleeping after 3 months, you got to contact these people. It's just look
Yeah.
at ways of tweaking things, but that also comes back to your circumstances. Like I said,
Mm.
yeah, if you are overrun and if you don't have that help, it gets really hard to sort of, you can't see the forest for the trees because you're stuck in this rut with no sleep. You're not regulating through sleep, which is so important. And you're looking after another child like we are, and you're trying to work, you're trying to get them to kindy, you're trying to do the shopping, you're trying to clean the house, you're trying to do all these things just to keep your head above water. And then if you get sick, that throws in this whole other ball game, right? So yeah, I just think it has to come back to you and what you need and what your family needs.
Mm.
That's all. I guess that's all I can say. Did that kind of answer your question?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the catchword over there was uh, desperation, and that is what I was looking to hear from you.
Mm,
Because some of the most toughest decisions in our life across different phases or different stages of our life, uh, we act out of desperation. It is not necessary that that is the ultimate answer to all your problems, but it is the start to you discovering, because you're letting in new wisdom, you're letting in new knowledge come in, and
mm,
as it suits you, as it pleases you, as it soothes you, you become more enriched, more spiritually higher, or more wise, to take the next 10 steps in a much more better way. So uh, yeah, so many people might not be in, um, they might not even know that there's such a thing called a sleep coach for kids. That's a very hyper
it's
niche,
crazy, isn't it?
not kids, babies actually.
Yeah,
Babies,
yeah,
we're not even talking about kids, we're talking about babies.
yeah.
So and um, even if it is there, many people might not have the financial access to it. So what you shared today over here is like pretty simple um, tips in terms of just start tracking and just start to
Mm,
understand how your kid is responding to different activities that are spread across the day. And for them, it is just one core activity, which is feeding them, and the other one could be probably cleaning them up after they they do their soiling activities.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so
yeah. Very
so
important.
it is just understanding that. And probably Scott, if you could share the name of the book also, we could put it somewhere in the description where people can read up about it. There are many materials that you
Yes.
can look up and enlighten yourself on the concept of
Yeah, I'll
um,
definitely I'll get that
sleep
before the
training.
yeah, I'll get that before the day's out. But also I just want to say, look, it's not for everybody. And so
Mm.
this is definitely not for everybody because like I said,
Yeah.
you have to, there's times where you got to let your child cry. Right. And
Yeah.
so some
It's
people
not for the
aren't
faint
down with
hearted.
that. It's not for the faint hearted. Hey, some people aren't
Yeah.
down with that. And I understand
Yeah.
totally why. But for us, it's like either we kept going in that downward spiral, not knowing what to do. Because we did try certain things. We read that book and we tried certain ideas through it, but they sort of rebounded on us and we were like, okay, where to from here? And so,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
said, it came to desperation times
Mm.
and it just meant that we can now function as a family in our way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely not for everybody, and I totally understand why. So, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I think it's
So in the short term, this entire concept is like you're buying. The short term gain is your child sleeps better. The long term gain is that you buy back your sanity.
Exactly.
You
You
buy
do,
back
but
your peace of mind. You know,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
So unless and until
And
you're not peaceful and you're not balanced, you can't help your child.
yeah,
I think so. It's the best decision. Hopefully, the best decision that you'll have done in your life after Louis is, entered in. So yeah, kudos to that.
yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Look, I just found the name of that book. It's called The Helping Babies Sleep Method, The Art
Mm.
and Science. Hang on, let me go back there. The Art and Science. Let me see there. Here we go. The Helping Babies Sleep Method, The Art and Science of Teaching a Baby to Sleep by Dr. Sarah Mitchell. So that's the book that we
Dr.
read
Sarah
first.
Mitchell.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the book that we read first, and she's got some really
Mm.
good concepts in there. Um,
Mm.
yeah, but I guess what the sleep consultant did as well is it kept us accountable, and so there was like, okay, we've invested in this, we've got to go through with this, and then also too, it's like, okay, this wasn't working, and then she would come back with some tweaks and said, right, try this, try that, and also her we chose her because of her background too. So she's got 4 kids and she was a midwife, and so
Mm.
we met her, and that was enough for us to say, okay, this person has the credentials I think that we need. 4 kids is pretty good for me, and we're like, yep, we'll choose her. So yeah, she must be doing something right.
Not two, not three, four is what we
4,
need.
the big
Yeah.
4.
Yeah. um, yeah, superb, Scott.
Yeah.
I love the topic of sleep because ultimately, when we wake up in the morning, any one of us, be it the child, be it us adults, if we wake up in the morning in a groggy state, in a miserable state, 99% chances are you have had something to do. It has got something to do with your sleep.
Mm,
And if you go back 10 steps even more further, it could be your sleep that's been disturbed the day before that, or the events that happened between the sleep that has caused you to not sleep properly. So
yeah.
anyways, this is like, um, uh, I think so people are going to get a lot of little nuggets of wisdom and a lot of ideas to sleep train their uh, little ones. So Scott, that was great.
Yeah, no,
So,
definitely.
Scott, I have this thing fresh baked material
Straight out of the
from
oven.
today morning, right?
Yep.
Yeah, straight out of the oven from right today morning. So, see, the concept is giving control to your kids when you want them to learn something new, when you want them to learn something complex, when you want them to learn something profound, right?
Mm,
And when I'm using these words, it's not necessarily spiritual or not necessarily some pseudoscience kind of thing. It is something practical. When you need to teach them, how can you give control to them? So here's the thing. Imagine this, Scott. You're super passionate about something, like being a professional water rafter.
sure.
You're out there hitting the ocean almost every day. Now, being a great rafter isn't just about the thrill of riding the waves. It's about building a bunch of other skills along the way that can be useful in all different areas of your life. So let's take a closer look at what happens when you choose to become an awesome water rafter. First off, you got to be on time. You got to be ready to go with your crew. So that means that you're working on your time management skills. And of course, safety is a top priority. You have got all your gear loaded up, so you drive carefully to keep yourself and your team safe. But it's not just about you. Sometimes your teammates might have a rough morning and they might show up late. So you got to be kind to them too. You have to be understanding. You have to be giving them a break. And when you're out there on the raft, you have to got to keep yourself sharp, quick-witted, and making smart decisions to avoid the rocks and keep yourself and everyone else safe. So in the pursuit of becoming an amazing rafter, you're actually picking up a bunch of other skills along the way. So this morning I shared this very same example with my daughter. It was early in the morning and we were exchanging our morning greetings, like good morning and kisses and all that. So uh, later in the day, while having lunch, I asked her to explain this whole thing to my wife, and I gave her control in such a way. I said, Adira, um, no, I didn't say Adira. I said, Ashwini, did you hear Adira mention about this new thing that she learned in the morning about skills and gaining multiple skills? Did you hear that? So my wife said, no, I haven't heard it. So I told, then Adira, do you want to tell that to Amma? Do you want to tell that to your mom? And just when I told that, she did it. She treated that whole material like a storybook narrative, and she told it almost 80% in the right order. There were 20% here and there. The order was mismatched. The
Yeah.
examples were mismatched.
Sure.
The tonality was a little over the place, but she got the concept. So when I treated her with respect, assuming
Yeah.
what she understood, like what I said to her, she nailed it. So we have to remember that when our kids need to learn something, we need to give them control. This is something that I learned
Mm.
today, but in a different way.
Yeah.
And when they have to learn something deep, when they have to learn something profound. So
Mm.
I thought of another example, a very simple example. So imagine a teenager named Maya, who has a passion for cooking. She loves experimenting with different ingredients and creates unique recipes. Her parents recognize her interest and decide to support her by giving her control over the family's weekly meal planning. So Maya takes in charge of researching the recipes, creating shopping lists, preparing the meals, and in the process she not only learns how to cook but also learn a wide range of skills like time management, budgeting, organizational skills,
Yeah.
creativity, nutrition knowledge, adaptability. And as she keeps doing this, she is going to become such a sharp and mindful and resourceful person going forward, that these skills can be applied in different areas of her life that she chooses to become her profession or a business or her ultimate passion project. So this is something that I wanted to share with you, Scott.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
It's amazing. Hey, and I mean, how did Athara feel after that? Was she beaming with pride as she delivered it
Yeah,
to her mum?
yeah, there was a spark of joy
Yeah.
in that tone, because when I treated her at par with me in
Mm.
terms of the wisdom sharing experience, so she felt that inner hi-fi, her heart and her
Yeah.
brain gave a hi-fi, virtual
Yeah.
hi-fi inside inside, saying that yes, your dad just treated you as an adult and you have got the permission to you know tell the entire story just like your dad.
Yeah.
And I think so that that gave her a confidence that she can be this person who understands and who's able to reproduce that knowledge and wisdom
Mm.
that she learned it a few hours back. So yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. And I guess, like, were there times in your past where, you took full control of the situation, or your mum took full control of the situation? And were there any sort of areas, I guess, where you kind of noticed where Athra was like, look, just let me do it? Was she kind of independent from the beginning, or was she kind of relying on you guys in any way growing up?
uh
I mean, obviously, she's
this
relying on us for
Yeah.
fundamentals,
Yeah.
but I guess in terms of these sort of like projects, I guess like art projects
Yeah, so
or you
these
know,
these uh, reliance part which is there, I think so it's more to do with the approval part.
mm,
So there is some kind of a validation that she needs from me or my wife, when she does an art project, when she does a sketch or when she does a watercolor painting, she comes up to us and shows it. And with me, she knows that she's going to get the most most hard hitting
The
slap on the face
critique.
feedback, because yeah,
Yeah.
because I don't beat her. I don't play the kuchi kuchi kind of thing with her, especially especially with when it comes to art. So I'm like
Sure.
spot on, hard on with my feedback. I can't be lying to my daughter,
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
wow, that's great, did you think about adding these two things into that? And then, no, this is not good, this is good, this is what is working, and this is what you need to work on. Have you thought about it? What do you think? Then she will have her own perception or her own concept about it. She will shed a few tears, and then when she goes back to the drawing board, she comes up with a brilliant finished piece. So
And you're like,
we are the
that's what
bouncing
I'm talking about. Right there. That's it. And then she's like,
so we are that bouncing board, or we are the bouncing wall for her, where she needs to get that instant reaction or instant feedback
yeah.
for what it is. And guess what, now she's so smart that she'll guess, or she'll know that whether we are attentive or not when we are observing her artwork, or when we are giving her a feedback or not. Because there are times, say for example, I've just finished a call or I'm sending out an email, she'll come in middle of that and she'll show an art piece, and I'll say, yeah, very good. She'll say, Acha, did you even see the art? so, so
Gold.
she's very smart about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she seeks that feedback and she's open to that. So one thing I'm grateful for is she has learned to take hard
Oh, man.
feedback or
Yeah.
criticism with a pinch of salt.
Which most adults
She's
now
not negative
don't.
about it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's great, because like most adults these days, if you work in a creative endeavor, people
Yeah.
still get their back up because someone says, "Hey, we need to make a change here." What?
Yeah.
A change?
Yeah.
Well, how dare you? You know, this is me. This is my art. You know, and so for how old's Arthur now? 11?
She's
10?
10.
11?
She's 10.
10.
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
And to be taking critical feedback from the
Mm.
maestro, you know what I mean, and then come up with
Yeah.
taking that on board, and then going back and going, right, yeah, like, what can I do? All right, let's try this, try
Mm.
that. Like, she's going to be way
Yeah.
ahead of other people, hey, in her pursuits for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
No,
see,
I
one
get,
thing there is, Scott, like I'm not too much worried about what profession she chooses, like whether she chooses to become a musician. She has got music in her. Like when I play some random stuff over here, when I'm composing or whatever, she could walk into the room and she could just sing a few lines and write the lyrics also for it. She's got that natural instinct.
awesome.
So I've not been pushing her for that. Since she has shown a lot of interest in arts, I'm pursuing that aspect of hers, but I'm not really worried about what she'll choose in life. The only
Mm.
thing that I am very mindful about is the hard life concepts that I learnt it all along the 30 years of my creative career. I'm
Mm.
serving it to her in much smaller packets and in
Yeah.
much frequent intervals,
Yeah.
so that when time comes for her to face an actual challenge, her her mindset is right there.
Yeah. Awesome.
She has not to think about it.
Yeah.
She'll be okay to fail. That's the thing that I'm working on. That's all.
And that's giving control, like you said, you're giving control back to your daughter, and it's only going to reap benefits, hey, in the future. And I guess I get caught, like, the reason why I asked you that question was I kind of get caught in that spiral of trying to do things, for the kids,
Yeah.
and then, all I get is sort of pushback, which is good, because then it just says to me, hey, take a step back, calm down, it doesn't matter, just let
Yeah.
your child do what they need to do. And so Violet's really into art, and it's come a long way. Like, she's only 4, and she's doing some really good stuff. Like,
Oh, nice.
and it's not that it's like, I'm gonna sit there and critique it and say that, whatever, but it's just something I've noticed, and then I'm actually looking at these pictures that she's drawing and going, wow, I actually like that. Like yesterday, she started drawing all these funny faces, like of Louis, and then she went to her granddad and grandma and me, and they were like these abstract Picasso kind of faces, and I was just like, wow, I really like these. I really like these things, And so I just want to give her the opportunity to do that. And so
Yeah.
I think for her 4th birthday, Charlotte went out and bought a little cart for her. And so it's got like 3 tiers and just filled it with all this art stuff. So paints, glue, like sequins, paper, all this
Mm.
stuff, brushes, whatnot. She's got a little table. And so whenever she needs it, she's just like, right, I'm going to go to my art cart now. We're like, yep, sweet. Draw us a picture of dad or whatever, and
Mm.
gets her out and gets her creative and doing her own thing too. So it's unreal. But the next thing I think I'll
Superb.
start doing is training myself to critique her and start giving her a bit of some gumption,
Yeah, you can start wearing some protective gear before you start giving
I think
feedback and
so. I
critique to
should,
her.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I will. I think I will for sure. But yeah, that was great. That's a great little
Yep.
lesson, hey.
Awesome. What else do you have, Scott?
Yeah, look, I'm going to go into my topic, the wound. Okay, and so
Mm.
I'm carrying on slightly from this sleep training because it's got a lot to do with that, and I think this is I
Yeah.
want your perspective on this too because I think this is very interesting, and to hear it from different cultural upbringings and backgrounds, I think will be really good. And so the wound, right? And so today. Actually, not today. A couple of days ago, I was introduced to this guy named Gabor Mate, which you're aware of, and I'm not sure if our
Mm.
listeners are, but I've only seen him for a couple of days, right? And so a good mate of mine, he sent me a few links to this guy, and so basically, Gabor was born in Budapest in 1944, and he says like a couple of months before the Nazis invaded his country. And so basically his grandparents were taken when he was like 5 months old to Auschwitz concentration camp and they were murdered. And then his dad was sent to forced labor. And so his mum, basically they fled. I think they stayed in Hungary. Don't quote me. I think they stayed in Hungary until 56 after the whole Stalin War and whatnot. And so they fled that country, and he now lives. They went to Canada, where he now lives, and so he got into
Mm.
medical school, into palliative care, and that kind of stuff. And then he really sort of built his methodology and his sort of what he talks about through his learnings, through his life suffering, his trauma. So his trauma. And that's where the wound comes into this. So the wound is a traumatic experience in your past, and it's predominantly in your childhood is what he talks about. So there's all these links
Mm.
between illness and mental illness and disease in the body from childhood trauma that hasn't been addressed. And so what he talks about too is basically, this is why it kind of got me thinking. It was quite challenging to listen to this, especially just as I'd finished the sleep training, right, with Louis.
Mm.
And he basically talks about, basically a wound is trauma, like I was saying, right, which leaves a psychological imprint in your mind and body. And he's of the thinking too that the mind and body are one. And so any sort of trauma to the mind or the body is inflicting, is hurting the immune system, and so it's leaving
Mm.
an imprint which leads to disease and weakening and stuff like this, right? And so he talks about the 4 fundamental needs of a child, right? And so he's saying, 1, the children are born with the need for unconditional attachment, acceptance, and love, the need to
Mm.
be held. And there's basically nothing that a child should have to do. This is number 2. There's nothing a child should have to do to make the relationship work with your parent. There's nothing. There's
Mm.
no conditions. There's nothing.
Yeah.
And they don't have to look a certain way. They don't have to act a certain way. They don't have to be a certain way, right? And then 3 is the capacity to experience all their emotions. So all their emotions in a healthy way. And then
Mm.
4 was the need for spontaneous play. And so, he talks about the big T's and the little T's. So the big T's are like things like, environmental disasters like a tsunami or cyclones and stuff like that leave imprints, neglect, abuse, these kind of things like a parental figure leaving or dying or something like that. But then there's these little T's that he talks about, which have the same effect. And so a little T can be things like letting your children cry it out, is what he said. So for the last 100 years, we've been taught that letting your children cry it out is the best way to sort of help them in certain areas. But he said what happens is there's this child has this innate biological need to attach to a parent. It's just if they don't attach to a parent and the parent doesn't attach to a child, life can't exist, right? And so once you start to, like, if a child is crying out for something, they need you. They need the parent. They're calling for the parent. They need that hug, or they need to be held, and they need to be tended to. And so he's saying what can happen is psychological traumas can happen when this need isn't met. And for me, I was like, when I was listening to it, I was like, oh, man, like I kind of felt guilt and shame because I'd just been through this with Louis, and he was crying a lot. And like I said, it was quite hard, to sit there and listen to him cry. And in a way, I'm just sort of like, look, this is the best thing for the family, But then hearing what Gabor was saying, I'm like, man, this is guilt, this is shame. But I guess after sort of sitting with it for a while, I've just kind of gone, look, there's no need to feel guilt or shame, because this also adds to this whole traumatic experience. So he talks too about, once we have a traumatic experience, it's not necessarily the experience that is, I guess, the major driving force. It's more the perception that we have of that trauma. So the trauma happens inside us, not to us. And so this guy's, he's been through the Nazis, and he's had death, and he's a major trauma, and he went through his whole life, and not until he was 70 he came to the realization that it's actually me. It's not these traumas that have happened to me. It's my perception of these traumas, and how much a victim I am of these circumstances that have brought this whole life of trauma, basically, and this whole life of hurt and whatnot to me. And so he was able to sort of compassionately look inside and let things go, like get straight into that wound, because once we're wounded, we try to protect that wound with everything, right? And so, we build this scar tissue up around that wound to protect ourselves, because we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to be hurt. And it reminds me of a couple of episodes ago when we started chatting, and I was talking, and then suddenly I broke down. But I kind of, in a way, I was like protecting myself there, because I didn't want to be too vulnerable on here. I didn't want to like cry it out and all this kind of stuff, So for me, there's work in that too, and I think that's the work of everybody, to go deep into those traumatic experiences and say, okay, what is this? What's going on here, and how can I release this? Like looking at it from that compassionate viewpoint, because also Gabor, he mentions a really poignant thing here where he says, once you reconnect with your authentic self, medical conditions can abate or even remit. And so once you do the work to inquire into, okay, what is that? What's going on here? Like, okay, and then you can start to see patterns throughout your life. Suddenly you start to release these things that were holding you captive, And so for me, I've done a lot of work around looking at my childhood and my upbringing, and it wasn't in any way, I wouldn't say it was neglectful. It wasn't this, or there was no abuse. There was nothing. For me, I would say I had a really nice upbringing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no psychological trauma in that. And so I've done the work around looking at, okay, I'm the youngest of four boys. And everything was kind of done for me. I'm the youngest. Let's do this for Scotty. Like, poor Scotty, let's do this. He's young. Don't pick on him, blah, blah, blah. And that kind of reinforced a lot through my life, because there was competition with me and my brothers, and there's this kind of, I've taken that forward into my work. And even so, where I can see I've been challenged in the past for wanting to be independent, but having certain people act out that role of what happened in that scenario, where it's like, we'll take care of this for you. You don't need to do anything. We'll do it. But I'm like, I want to do it. I want that independence. I want to show who I am, and even in my work, it wasn't until last year where I got the opportunity to get out and take another contract and work on my own that I was thriving in it. I was really thriving in this area where I had I was being heard. I was coming up with concepts and working with teams, but finally I felt like I was free because I had this opportunity to, I guess, be out on my own and work on my own and contribute because I had all these things inside me. I can contribute. Like, look, like I'm doing this. I've come up with this, and it's working. And so that, I guess, looking back for me, that's a time in my life where I can say, okay, that's kind of, I can trace that back to my upbringing, where it was kind of like, we'll do everything for you, like you said before, giving control. It was, in a way, mum was kind of controlling things for me because, out of love
Hmm.
and out of not wanting to hurt me. But in the end, it kind of led to me resisting and I guess, what's the word? Not, yeah, I guess it's resisting. I was getting resentful, that's the word, and resisting because I had something to give and I had something to be heard about, and so, yeah, it's a really, really interesting field that Gabor is in and he talks about. And so, yeah, I just want to hear from your perspective, on what you think of it, and I guess particularly around that link between the sleep training and these four fundamental needs of a child. What are your thoughts on that?
I have been following Gabor's work for quite some time. In fact, just last week when we were having a get together with our cousins, uh, Gabor's name came up because he's now suddenly becoming relevant in many of the houses because of the conflicts, because of the trauma, because of the suffering, because of a lot of turbulences that families are facing today. Um, Scott, I have just one thing for you to say is in this entire process, the one word that you have to practice or that we have to practice. When I'm saying you, it's looping back to
Mm,
me. It's echoing
sure.
back to me too.
Yeah.
And the same goes for listeners also. One thing you have to practice is the art of detachment. And this same Gabor Mate, who goes on to speak so much about the parenting, there are sections in which he talks about detached parenting also.
Mm,
So you have to be detached with your child emotionally. You have to be detached with yourself emotionally. You have to be detached with your spouse emotionally. And what do I mean by that? It does not mean that literally emotionally detached. It means that do not mess around their misery, their thoughts, what they are going through, and take it upon yourself and mix it with your own perception of that
mm,
misery, because you're already in a troubled state, whether you know it or you don't know it,
mm, mm,
right? And it only comes up to surface when you see someone else's misery, right? You only are made to realize what suffering you're going through, or what your perception is, or what your concept of life is when you see someone else going through the same thing, if not worse, right?
yep.
So
Yep.
the thing that we all have to learn is the concept of detachment. For everyone, the concept of detachment is going to be different, just like our breath, just like the way we breathe. We have got our own breathing patterns.
Yep.
uh, just last week, like I told you in the uh, gathering that we had, I had to explain breathwork in the most simplest of terms. So when I was explaining that, I said, okay, I can hold my breath for like 30 seconds, like, or 35 seconds. Can you hold it? You won't be able to hold it, right? You might be able to hold it for 15 seconds today, but if you keep
Mm,
practicing it, you might be able to hold it for 60 seconds, and I will be still stuck in 30 seconds. So I have to keep pushing my breath work even more to hold it a bit more longer. So just like how our breath works, and
mm,
how we have got a different heartbeat, we have got a different tune in ourselves, Just as the same way, the concept of detachment should be understood and practiced by each one of us in everyday life. So one of the best examples that you just shared at the starting of this episode is, even though your kid was crying his lungs out, you had to stay away from the child.
Mm.
You couldn't resist the desire to go and hold the child or go and pick the child. But if that is what is good for the child, that is what is good for the child, right?
Mm. Mm.
Now, our our problem in life is also this, that we tend to hear from too many masters, too
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
people who are experts in too many niches. So
Yep.
we take five pieces of wisdom from sage or monk A, we take five pieces of wisdom from monk B, we take
Mm.
two pieces of wisdom from our parents, we take two pieces of wisdom from our colleagues, we mix them all into this ball of mess, and then we keep bouncing it all
Yeah.
in our
It's so
life.
true, isn't it?
So
So true.
that is something completely our choice. We
Yeah.
can what do you say, insulate ourselves in such a way that we do not allow certain things to be influenced in our life.
Yep.
I'm not saying that you should not hear to certain kind of people or only hear to certain kind of people. That choice is up
Mm.
to you. But
Yep.
when you hear it, when you hear a certain piece of wisdom, make it a point to practice it from step 0 to step 100 in completion,
Yeah.
as suggested or as prescribed or as advised by that person who has taken time to share that wisdom with you. What we do is that we give up at step 3, say, oh, it's not working,
Yeah.
what rubbish he's talking about. I'm not able to get from step 3 to step 4, and he's talking about step 100. This is not
Mm.
good, let's find another one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
another one will share that same wisdom, but he'll share in 7 steps, and you'll believe, oh, this one is the best one because he shared only 7 steps, I'm going to try this. That will also not work. So so the
Yeah.
point is,
Totally.
again, first thing is practice detachment. Second one is, um, follow the wisdom of one person, apply it thoroughly, analyze it how it is responding to your inner being, to your physical being, and then take a call on what do you want to do next.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like in Indian medicinal practice, there's a division called as Ayurveda. You would have heard about Ayurveda. So
Yeah.
Ayurveda, the medicines of Ayurveda are herbal, and it's of a different kind. It's not the typical allopathic kind of route. It's more to do with natural herbs and all that stuff.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
half of the world who believes that's good, half of the world believes that is scam.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
I would like to take the core essence of Ayurveda. When you start taking any medicines for any illness that you're having, when you start taking medicines of Ayurveda, you know what is the first thing that happens, Scott? The first thing that happens is you won't find relief. It will not give you relief. It will bring out even more misery. So, say
Right.
for
Yeah.
example, if you're having arthritis and you're having joint pain, the doctors will give you medicines. You start taking the medicines. In the first few days, your joints will ache and pain, and you'll be in a miserable state. But that lasts for 4 or 5 days. After 5 days, that medicine truly starts showing effect, because the concept of Ayurveda, I'm giving you a basic layman
Yeah.
concept,
Yeah.
okay?
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the concept of Ayurveda is this, that it first detoxes your body. So as something is detoxing from your body, it flushes out all the unwanted things. And when something is unwanted and it gets out of your body or gets out of your home, it becomes stinky, it becomes painful to be around, right? So you should have the
Sure.
patience to withstand that misery, and after
Yep.
that you receive the goodness. So
Mm.
here's the last thing that I would like to leave you with, Scott. See, in Japanese concept, there's this thing called as kitsungi, right? So kitsungi is the art of repairing broken pottery or broken vessels or cups or whatever. And how they repair it is by putting glue, mixing glue with gold, silver, or other precious metals. So the technique in kitsungi is this, that it emphasizes the beauty of imperfections.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Cool.
the philosophy of kitsungi is such that you have to embrace your flaws, and more importantly, enjoy the beauty of the process of repair.
Mm.
So this has to be the mission of a life. Understand where you're flawed, fix it with a gold lacquer or golden glue, and enjoy the process of fixing, and show up as a kitsungi broken pottery. Show up in the world that way,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
love
yeah.
being yourself. Yeah,
Yeah,
that is what I have to
beautiful.
leave you with.
Beautiful. Yeah, that puts it exactly right. And just to go back to where you said, like so many people are grabbing bits and pieces of the masters and stuff like that's exactly what happened with me where I was like listening to it and then suddenly the guilt and the shame comes up, It's like, oh, maybe I should be doing this, but it's like, hang on, calm down. It's all good. Like what we did is for my family and for us, and that's okay, and I own that, And so he does have these good, um, yeah, I guess sections about, in particular, like I guess the culture of today and whatnot, and so parents having to go back to work early and sort of the dysfunct of the community around, and so I tend to agree with that. Whereas, like I said, in our situation, we sort of don't have that close knit community. We do
Yeah,
have the grandparents that come around, every now and then and help out when we ask them to. But it'd be great if we could have them, if we didn't have to ask them to, and
hmm.
it'd be great if we had like a closer kind of bond, I guess, with our kids and whatnot. But hey, look, it is what it is. But yeah, I do believe that this sort of unnatural way of having to go back to work early and then sending your kids to daycare and then they looked after by the daycare people. And Gabor talks about there runs a risk of, the kids attaching to other kids. Yeah, because some parents are sending their kids back or sending their kids to daycare after 2 weeks and going back to work, so it's crazy.
Hmm.
But I guess it all comes back to you and your needs and what you need in life, I guess, as well. And so,
Yeah, in
yeah,
simple words, Scott, just make it fun. Okay, it
yeah,
might be the most traumatizing thing for you, it might be the most toughest thing for you, it might be the most toughest thing for your child, but what can you do to neutralize that situation and make it fun,
mm, mm,
without negating that this is a tough decision, without
yeah, yeah,
denying that it is a tough decision? What can you do to make it fun? Take it light,
mm,
because what we are on this earth for like 30 years of our parenting years, right? Or 30 or 40 years, right?
yeah, yeah,
Depending on when you have a child. 30 or 40 years, that's like 4 decades, right? 4 decades. So you have got 4 decades of choices to make. May let your first decade be the miserable one, because you're just starting out. You were never a parent before these
yeah,
decades, so you make all the blunders, make all the mistakes you have in the first decade, and the coming 3 decades, just have fun. That's all.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, well said, well said.
Yeah,
Well, what do you got next for us, Prashant?
I think so. We are running out of time,
We're running
Scott.
late. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, no,
yes, we are hitting
it's been an
the,
hour.
yes,
It's
and
flown
we
by.
and we hit pretty good concepts today. I think
Yeah,
so. A lot of good wisdom about sleep, about control, and about
attachment,
the
unattachment. Yeah,
attachment,
yeah.
and the legend Gabor Mate.
Mm,
All these materials are from our own lessons, learnings, and experiences. Take these nuggets of wisdom and these pieces of advice with a pinch of salt.
mm,
Put in
exactly.
your seasoning, put in your
Yes.
seasoning, put in your meat, put in your herbs, make it your own. And may may this may this episode bring a little bit of joy, a little bit of insight, a little bit of alignment in your day-to-day life. Thank you, Scott, for all the amazing stories you had for me.
Thank you, Prashant, and thanks for listening, guys. And join us for some more amazing stories, tales of woe and wisdom.
Absolutely. See you soon.
Bye.
Ciao.